guys, welcome to The Bite. My name is Jackie. Today's episode, we are going to make a really nice, sweet, dairy-free dessert called Hilbeh. Hilbeh just refers to fenugreek seeds, which are going to flavor this cake and make it kind of like a maple syrupy, very earthy flavored. This is a very common Middle Eastern cake, and my family eats it a lot during Lent when we are not eating dairy or any animal products whatsoever. And this is perfect because it uses the water that we use from boiling the fenugreek seeds and olive oil as a binder for the whole cake. It's delicious, it's very easy, and let me take you through the ingredients. So I have here my fenugreek seeds. I've rinsed these and drained them in just some water, and this is just water that we're gonna be boiling the seeds in. One fenugreek seed fell into here, but I have yeast and sugar. And for my dry ingredients, I have fine semolina. You wanna make sure it's semolina and not farina. Just regular flour, some salt, and Nigella seeds. These are what the Nigella seeds look like. They look like black sesame seeds, but it is important to get Nigella seeds and not black sesame seeds. They are two completely different flavors. Some olive oil, make sure you're using some good quality olive oil. And just for simple syrup, I have sugar, water, and a squeeze of lemon, just to prevent any crystallization. We're gonna be putting this all together in my 12-inch circle baking dish. If you don't have one this size, you can use a 9x13. It may change the thickness of the cake slightly, so you wanna keep an eye on it when it's in the oven. But this is what we're going to be using today. So this looks like a lot going on here, and it kind of, you know, there's different parts, but it's gonna come together seamlessly. So just follow the instructions and let's get started. First thing we're going to do is put the fenugreek seeds into the water, and we want to let this come to a boil. When it boils, you're gonna notice that the fenugreek seeds start to plump up. The water kind of turns into an amber color, and it gives off what I think of as kind of like a maple syrup fragrance. Whenever my parents would make this, I would always come down thinking they're making pancakes or something, because it always smelled like maple syrup to me. So I want to let this boil until they plump up slightly, and along with that, we are going to be working on our simple syrup. I do the simple syrup in the beginning before I make the dessert itself, because when you're making a hot dessert, you need to pour cold syrup over it. That's just gonna help to keep the dessert nice and soft. So I'm gonna put both of these on the stove. With the fenugreek, I'm gonna do it for about medium-high and for about 5 to 7 minutes. The simple syrup, I wanna make sure that I'm stirring from the bottom so that the sugar doesn't burn at the bottom. And then towards the end, we're gonna add the lemon. So this is gonna boil. We're gonna reduce it down to a simmer for a total of 10 minutes. And I'm gonna get them on the stove. So the fenugreek came to a boil, and I have the reserved water right here. I don't know if I mentioned in the beginning, but you wanna make sure that you're reserving this water, because this is going to add flavor to the cake since we're not adding any dairy. I also have my simple syrup simmering, and it's gonna be cooling off while we bake the cake. So here is the yeast and the sugar. I wanna let the yeast bloom for a couple of minutes. You wanna do this with some lukewarm water. So what I did, because this is still really hot, I took a little bit of this Hilbeh water, the fenugreek water, mixed with some regular cold water, and that is going to help bloom this yeast. So you wanna let this sit for just a couple of minutes. You don't really need to stir it. It's gonna do its thing on its own, and I'm gonna set that aside. And in here, I have all of my dry ingredients, so I just want to give that a good mix really quickly. So now everything is pretty well dispersed in here, and to this I'm going to add all of my olive oil. I'm gonna mix this up. And clearly this needs more liquid, so what I'm going to do is add an extra cup of the Hilbeh water. So this water right here, the fenugreek water, people also drink this as tea, and it's really great for fighting inflammation. It's great for stomach aches, and it also, when you're a new mother, supposedly it helps to for milk production for new mothers. So I'm gonna let this run for a bit. So this is looking really good. You can smell that olive oil. And now I'm just gonna add all the yeast. I'm gonna come around this way. Depending on the humidity in the air, you may want to add more or less of the fenugreek liquid. Oh, and then also, of course, you want to add your fenugreek seeds. So these have been strained, and you can see they've plumped up quite a bit. They're much more tender now. I'm gonna give this a mix. I think I'm going to add some more of the fenugreek water. Here's an extra 1/4 cup, and if I need to, I'll just add the rest. This looks great. It's tender, it's soft, and it's just soft enough. This is going to go into the pan beautifully. So I wanna let this, first I wanna take off all the dough from the hook, and I want to let this rise for about 30 minutes. Whenever you're working with a yeasted dough, you want to let it rise whenever you're done touching it each time. So I'm gonna let this rise about 30 minutes. Then we're gonna put it into the pan, cut it, and then we're gonna let it rise again for another 30 minutes. So my dough has been rising for 30 minutes, and I let it sit in a cool, dry place. I always like to put a kitchen towel over it, and look at that. It looks beautiful. You can hear the movement of the dough. So I'm gonna put this out onto my baking tray. I've greased my baking tray with some olive oil, and I just want it to cover the entire surface of the tray. Alrighty, this is looking perfect. The dough is nice and soft. It feels great. So I'm gonna show you a really nice pattern to cut this in. So it took me a couple of times. If you follow me on Instagram, I made a couple mistakes when I was cutting it as I was testing the recipe multiple times. But let me show you an easy way that you can get a nice pattern on your circle tray. If you're using a square tray, it's gonna be a little bit different, but this works with a circle tray. So I'm gonna bring you closer and we'll get started. So first, I wanna cut a line directly in half. And then again in half, making a cross. So now there's 4 sections, and each section I want to make like tracing the pattern of the triangle 2 times. You see how that made kind of 3 different triangles? I want to do the same on all of these. All right, so there's 4 even sections. Now I want to take my knife, and with each section, I want to cut them in half this way. So doing this created 4 more sections. So we are going to take each one and cut it down. So I'm gonna start from about here and end where this piece is ending. So if you want, you can even take here, it may be easier to start from here. So you take this corner piece right in here, and you want to bring it up to right there. So here's a small line, and you want to do the same thing. Take that piece and bring it down to there. So I'm going to do that just so you can see. Right up till here, because this is the center. And do the same thing again, starting from this center piece. So you see how that created diamonds? This is nice individual pieces. So I'm going to continue doing that right over here. Look at the pretty pattern you're left with. It's like a star that keeps coming outwards. This is the most common pattern that you'll find whenever there's a savory dish, a sweet dish made in a circle pan in the Middle East. This is a very traditional pattern. It took me a minute to get it, but I tried to explain it to you as best as possible. And if you want, I can actually put a diagram of how to cut it in the blog so you can kind of get another visual. This is going to rest, or rise, I should say, for another 30 minutes. covered before we put it in the oven at 400 degrees. So we'll be right back. All right, look at how beautiful this is. Oh my goodness, this makes me so happy. So it's risen perfectly. This is gonna go into a 400-degree oven. My oven's preheating right now. It's gonna bake for 30 minutes. You want to look for kind of like a golden crust on the edges, and the top may or may not get golden brown. If you want it to be golden brown, you can broil it for about a minute, not too much longer than a minute, because you don't want it to get too hard. I don't do that. Honestly, I think 30 minutes in the oven is perfect. The edges still get crisp. The top gets a nice texture. It may or may not be golden brown, but it works perfectly every time for me. So I'm gonna get to that once my oven's preheated, and then I will take this baby out of the oven. We'll pour our syrup over it, and then we'll eat it. It just came out of the oven. It looks beautiful. Come take a closer look. Look at that. So now I'm just gonna pour the syrup right over it. You wanna make sure it covers every portion of this. This is going to need to sit for a few minutes just so that it can soak in, kind of like a tres leches cake needs to soak in all that liquid. I'm gonna get this. This needs to do the same. So this is just gonna take a minute to soak it all in. There's no sugar in the cake itself, so that's why we add the simple syrup. That's what's gonna give it the sweetness that the cake needs. So you can see it already kind of soaking in. Check it out. I can't lift it because it's hot, but you see, there was a huge puddle over it, and there still kind of is, but it's soaking all in. This is gonna take a little bit. The patience, it will be worth it in the end, I promise. So I tried, I'm being very patient, but it's just not gonna happen. I just gotta go in for it. This corner piece is calling my name. I've already kind of, been tracing, outlining it with my fork. Hopefully it's easy to come out. Ooh, baby. You're supposed to let this sit for, let's get this out. Give me a second. So you're supposed to let this cake sit. Wait. Come back here. You gotta take a look at the inside of that. You see? And it's only gonna get better as it sits. I am just a little impatient, sitting here waiting for it. It's 1 a.m. It's time for me to eat this Hilbeh. Alrighty. But like I was saying, you're supposed to let it sit for a good 30 minutes or so. About that. Best Hilbeh ever. Letting it rise those 2 times really does a lot for the texture of the cake. It is imperative that you do that both times. You guys have to give this a try. Fenugreek may be a hit or miss for some people, but if you try it in this form, I promise you will love it. You need to give this a try, and when you do, don't forget to let me know on Instagram. All my social media links are down below, and get the recipe on my blog. I hope you guys enjoyed this and give this a try during Lent season or after Lent season. It is delicious. This is actually going to be my husband's birthday cake. I'm gonna put a couple candles on it tomorrow. Thank you guys for watching The Bite, and we'll see you next time.